Protesters hit the streets from Union Square to Times Square while you were asleep with a simple and powerful reminder.
If you really want to dignify the life of Eric Gardner, you will do so through peaceful protest.
As traffic was snarled in spots, protesters even received support from drivers that were stuck.
The battle for proper immigration, the need to find a health care system that is indeed fair for everyone, the looming threats from terrorism overseas and here at home, and the issue that has been with us now for generations, racial equality and trust between black, white, brown, yellow, and every color in between. It is the national conversation that can no longer be avoided. It's a pleasure to welcome to MidPoint, former member of the House of Representatives in service to voters in the 16th District of Florida. Republican Mark Foley joins us here on the show. Congressman, good to see you again.
Ed, good to be with you. Very good.
How do we get started here now? Because we now must have this national discussion. It cannot just come from law enforcement. It cannot just come from the people on the streets. It must come from our lawmakers in Washington. Where do we need to start?
Well, we have to recognize why the African American community feels put upon. If you look at the Eric Gardner tape and don't feel compelled that a wrong was established by chokeholding a man when he says he can't breathe, then your sensitivity meter's completely off. Michael Brown's a little bit different. We have to look at the facts of cases, and we shouldn't jump to conclusion. Regrettably, because of media influence and the reporting of these incidents, people lose sight of the facts. That aside, members of Congress, black, white, Hispanic, need to come together and recognize there's still racial tension in America, and it has to be resolved by dialogue, not demonstration.
But are they doing enough, and are a lot of the people in Washington simply so inside the beltway, so insulated, that to them they don't understand what goes on at street level, and many times it's nothing more than demagoguery and blowhardness that they're just speaking every day?
Some don't come from districts where they encounter African Americans on a frequent basis, and I'm not saying that's the norm, but I will suggest to you, if you are from Palm Beach County and go to Belle Glade, you get an understanding of what the life is like of a person living in poverty, and the police are always suspicious that they're going to commit a crime. People who reflect on an African American walking to them and cross the street, afraid they're going to be, those are all signals we wouldn't understand in the sanctity of the House of Representatives. Protected by the police, you can say anything on the House floor with immunity. You're not harassed, or no police officer comes up to you and says, "What are you doing here?" But that doesn't happen to the African American. They're always viewed with suspicion. If you don't understand that in your heart and in your head, you'll never come to a conclusion why we should be talking more forcefully about race relations.
Is not, though, part of that fear consistently being pushed forward by the race baiters of our society, the people such as Al Sharpton and the others, who continually seem to be pushing forward a negative and push and a fight? And none of that. Louis Farrakhan in the past week has talked about he's going to burn the country down. Doesn't that hurt the overall message? And that's tough to get past.
No question. I think those are the people that incite the problems. Most people recognize there's going to be problems in America with criminal behavior, and if Michael Brown robbed a store and pushed that clerk, as was demonstrated, Al Sharpton shouldn't be defending him. He should be calling for law and order. But what happens is these things get stuck in the paralysis of he said, she said, they said. You don't solve problems that way. But you do have to be sensitive to the fact that we can't view it from our prism. We have to recognize what it's like to be them. But the race baiters, Al Sharpton, incite people. They will not see the wrong created by anyone of color. They say it's all the police's fault. When we lose respect for the police department, we should never do that. We should never assume all police officers are wrong. The Gardner case needs thorough review, and I do welcome the Justice Department's investigation, because the man said he couldn't breathe, and they continued to choke him and kill him.
Justice Department, by the way, said that this whole chokehold case, they said they're going to review that very quickly.
And that's what we need to do. Determine the facts, review the evidence, but not allow the talking heads on either the media or these Al Sharpton types to set the dialogue. What President Obama should be doing is not necessarily just sending Eric Holder to certain sites and say, go to Ferguson, go to New Jersey, go to New York. We should be broadening the conversation because America elected an African-American president, and I refuse to accept the fact that we're racist.
All right, now I'm going to ask you to hold that thought because I have a follow-up for you on that, but we got to take a break. We're going to return with Congressman Mark Foley, turn to the issues also of immigration and the simmering dislike between those who hold power inside that beltway. That and more coming up right here on MidPoint, where we do question everything. Welcome back to MidPoint. Former member of the House of Representatives, Florida Republican Mark Foley joins us here in the studio. Congressman, I want to follow up on something that you said in the last segment here where you talked about the president and Eric Holder. There is a perception by some people in America that they are part of the problem here in this entire racial discussion, that they seem to be more concerned about black lives than white lives sometimes. Is that, in your opinion, part of the problem? Are they part of the problem?
They are part of the problem because if you'll recall the Harvard police incident when the president has a press conference and says the police acted stupidly, that sets the framework of how his constituents of color are viewing the leader of the free world, suggesting police act stupidly. That transfers to their inability to say that they're good cops and bad cops. They look at everybody the same. They're all bad. And that's a bad premise. When Holder sends 4 people from the White House to Ferguson or to funerals for Michael Brown, and they don't go to a general's funeral who was killed in duty, it sends a signal that something's wrong here. We're not respecting either the military or we're overemphasizing something because it has a political appeal. That's wrong. The president has to be, if you will, colorblind. I wouldn't expect him to disregard his color, but he has a chance to imbue in America the fact that I got to this high office because of the good graces of the voters and the American people gave me 2 chances, one in my first elect, one in my second.
In your opinion,
that's magnificent.
In your opinion, is he unable to be colorblind?
I think he's sensitive to the way he probably grew up in Chicago, and we carry those patterns with us. But that's where you have to break the mold and say, but think about where I came from and who I am now. So I have to have a capacity to set a better tone. I've got to reach out. When we had the 2000 election, there was disagreement in Palm Beach County because this was the site of the Gore v. Bush.
Yep.
Who did I invite down? John Lewis. John Lewis, the noted civil rights icon, came to my district after that election and spoke at a gathering I brought together of everyone from human rights coalitions, police, League of Women Voters, and let them hear the civil rights icon because I wanted my community to know a member of Congress, black and white, working on a Ways and Means Committee could come together in peace and tranquility and have differences of opinion, but simply not allow those differences to be divisive to us personally. It was a standard, you said. It's a way you create an opportunity for a better, more comprehensive dialogue.
A couple of minutes I got. Let's spin to a couple of things inside the Beltway. First, the president here. The president meets with Mitch McConnell. No bourbon served. Not much got done. But then he has an interesting meeting with Hillary Clinton that didn't last very long whatsoever. Just a little short meeting. What do you think would it take from these 2 meetings here?
Well, one thing, I think they should have publicized the meeting with Mitch McConnell. I think the fact that he has only met with the minority leader 3 times in his 6 years as president is telling. I think the fact he and Hillary were probably jawboning over something, which is understandable. She's a former Secretary of State. But if you're going to set a pattern of dialogue, back again to what we were talking about earlier, let the public in to see the conversation. Let me hear what Mitch McConnell's concerns are. Let me hear what the president's are. But to have a closed-door meeting amongst 2 leaders of soon to be the majority leader and the president of the United States to keep it behind closed walls, to me, defeats the purpose of a meeting.
But do you think anything substantive really came out of this? Because let's face it, we are at loggerheads here. Nobody wants to move. The president won't. Mitch McConnell, though, might be the only adult in the room, as far as some people are concerned.
It was theater of the absurd. It was much dress rehearsal. Sadly for the president, Mitch McConnell knows more about legislative battles and government operations than our own president of the United States, so he will have met his match. The president probably knows that to some degree. He has very few friends left in Congress. Even Chuck Schumer's running for cover on health care, which shows you kind of the paralysis of the Democratic Party. When a guy like Chuck Schumer, extraordinary liberal, says, well, maybe we spend too much time on health care. You think? That's why they lost in 08, they lost in 10, they lost in 12. So it's not about just legislative parlance and policy and make nice meetings and pretend we're friends. It's getting something done. And I hope Mitch McConnell keeps some people in check, shows America we can govern.
Can he keep people in check, though?
It's difficult.
There's a lot of fighting in that Republican Party right now.
It's a difficult party to corral. But I think the common wisdom amongst people I've talked to in the Beltway and the particular members of the Republican caucus want to prove to America, you've given us a chance. We will not blow it. We will make something happen.
I only got about 20 seconds left here. Hillary and Barack Obama getting together. Perhaps it's like, Mr. President, let's put our differences behind us and help things for the party here and make sure you help me get elected.
Well, they're going to share a bond. I'm not sure it's a good one for Hillary. Their linkage, their closeness, their proximity may be perilous for her presidential campaign. It's a difficult time.
And she has to come out and start being really harsh on some issues very soon.
Right, and when she starts that, maybe she was saying that, Mr. President, I'm about to drop kick you.
And here it comes, exactly. It's always
Thanks,
a pleasure,
Ed.
Congressman.
It's great
Thanks
to
so
be
much
with
for
you.
coming in. Merry
Thanks.
Christmas to you
Thank
and your
you,
family.
and you as well.
All right, short break, and we're back with those who need no magic to grant wishes. Now more than 10,000 of them. And at 34 minutes after the hour, the latest from Wall Street. See if we can make you money before the holiday starts, right? It's all coming up here on MidPoint.